All right, next up, we have a talk that comes from a wealth of experience on how to create a cannabis footprint regionally in the industry, letting folks know that you're here and you're here to do business. So here to do that talk is moderator from the Detroit Free Press, Kathleen Gray, and EVP of Corporate Development at Acreage Holdings, Tyson Macdonald. Please welcome them to the stage.
Hi, Tyson.
Hi, how are you?
Welcome to Michigan.
Yeah, thank you.
So you're a former hedge fund guy. How did you end up in the cannabis market?
So I was introduced to our founder and CEO Kevin Murphy a couple years ago, and really instantly knew that was someone that I could go to work for, sort of in any business. Kevin got his start in cannabis back in 2011 in Maine. Put together over the next several years a pretty impressive portfolio of New England-focused assets, and a couple years ago realized, as an investor in this space, really the way to take this forward was to put together a team to help accelerate what he'd already done. Turn it into an operating company and bring it into the public markets. And so I was, when I was introduced, certainly for me to see an emerging market in the United States of this scale was fascinating. To see the other teammates that Kevin was bringing in, felt incredibly inspired to work with. And then, and frankly, those were my motivations. It was, this was like a fascinating intellectual exercise of helping to build this thing in a fascinating market. I think, like many people, as I got more and more involved in this, and just really started to engage with the people that cannabis has been helping and serving for many, many years, certainly before I got involved, it's become something I can't not do anymore. So. It sort of engages the head, engages the heart every single day.
And was it a weird transition? I mean, do you get a lot of questions from people, and you're into marijuana now, and what kind of eye raises do you get when people find out what business you're in?
Yeah, not as much. 2 years ago maybe, there was certainly, I come from my parents are fairly conservative, so they took me about a month to tell them what I was doing. But honestly, like I'll tell you, when I was running the hedge fund, my daughter, right, had asked me what I was doing for work then, right, and I said, we have this system we've developed that picks, interesting investments, and we dig in and due diligence, and I was sort of walking her through what I was fascinated about, and like my 7-year-old daughter, right, she kind of was like, Dad, she broke it down for me. She said, I get who doctors help, and I get who firefighters help, but who do you help? And it was a powerful moment that I actually have lived with for many, many years, and hands down, I have never been prouder to come to work than I do, certainly in this industry and certainly working for this company.
Tell us about Acreage Holdings, what kind of philosophy it has. I know that you got started in 2011 with the medical market, and I assume that it was with the thought that recreational market was going to be coming online at some point down the road.
Frankly, I think back in 2011, maybe not as obvious, right? But I think, as over the years as it's evolved, our ambition is to build a world-class organization within the United States that is focused on delivering the best products, predictable, dosable, medicine for consumers. And I think even in an adult use space, folks are really focused on wellness and looking for products that are going to help them live their lives and as best as they possibly can. So I think there's, we want to deliver high quality medical products for folks. We also want to deliver high quality products that consumers may be using sort of at their own discretion around how they're going to incorporate that into a sort of a wellness regime for their lives. So it's really, for us, it's the company's been built really through on the backs of all of our partners. I mean, we've every single market that we've moved into, we found incredible local teams that understand the local market. We can bring the things we can do at scale, whether it be access to capital. I think the last panel was talking about compliance and regulatory. I mean, those are things that are hard to do at a small scale in a cost-efficient way. Those are things that we've assembled a team that is entirely focused on how to implement the right controls, the right systems, the right processes to make sure that you can run a compliant program sort of in every single market and make sure you are delivering consistent products sort of across every key market, all markets really in the United States. And then more recently, with the Canopy arrangement that we put together, it's turning this into a real global company that can deliver in every market around the world the same promise. That's you talk about brands in the last panel. It's hard to deliver against a brand promise unless you can actually manufacture consistent products in every single market, everywhere you want to be. So.
Now, with the Canopy purchase, that can't be finalized until policy changes on a federal level. Acreage talks about being at the intersection of commerce and policy. You've got some heavy hitters on your board, former Speaker of the House John Boehner, former Massachusetts Governor Bill Weld. How does that play into trying to change federal policy too?
Sure. So I think point of distinction. If federal policy does change such that cannabis is federally permissible, that will trigger an obligation for Canopy to close the transaction. They could waive that right if they chose and close it sooner. There's some reasons why they wouldn't want to. But in terms of the board, the management team, I mean, the philosophy has been, and give Kevin a lot of credit for this, making sure that we are putting in place key folks that can really help drive this industry and de-risk it for investors, other than for the fact that it's cannabis, right? So when you have someone, of those kinds of stature, Prime Minister Mulroney or Speaker Boehner, you can accomplish in a phone call what might take 6 months of on-the-ground work. So it's a much more efficient way to help not just ourselves, obviously, which we would like to do, but really the industry. Get to where we have common goals, we have common ideals. We need, banking access. We need, we need less sort of federal, federal overhang over some of the things we're trying to do. We need, action and movement on some social justice issues. So, I mean, those are things that we're it's certainly for our benefit, but we believe it's really for the benefit of this industry.
Do you have a sense of when federal policy might change? Do you think we're getting closer?
So we've said, I think publicly yesterday, most recently on our earnings call, we do still think that's a nearer term event than many people might expect. There are some interesting political dynamics going on that might compel some action. Certainly from a voter perspective, it has stronger, voter support than ever before. Granted, there's some other issues that are, top of mind that enjoy the same level of support that you still see some challenges on action. But I do think sooner or later you're going to see some movement, and certainly we as Acreage believe that there's movement there sooner or later.
What is the company's presence in Michigan, and what are your plans for the future?
So Michigan, we're super excited about Michigan. I think it's a fantastic market. I think both previous panelists touched on some of the reasons why. It's a big market now. We think it's going to be a compelling market going forward. I do think the way that the regulatory system rolls out will be important in terms of how we've seen growth either accelerated or hampered in other markets, depending upon how that looks. But we are currently building out a Detroit, a Battle Creek, and a Bay City dispensary. We have cultivation and manufacturing up in Vassar that we're building out, and have a great local partner that we've been working with, for a while. Continuing to look for partners that are additive and accretive. Certainly, there's plenty in Michigan because everyone knows Detroit hustles harder. So, plenty of good partners. I'm certainly excited to to continue to build the team here and build on what we're doing.
How have you found Michigan's regulatory environment compared to the other states that Acreage is involved in?
So I think I'd say I differentiate. I mean, I think at the state level, they've been very receptive. We've been in talked to them for many months and have been very receptive to just our experiences in other locations and how to make some changes in terms of the way they're thinking about sort of state level policy. Like many other markets, it's very local. I mean, the local communities really care about how how cannabis is going to show up in their communities. That's no different than even some of the biggest markets like California. It's a very local, sort of county by county game. And so having just the best, strongest partners that you can have that understand the local dynamics, have those relationships, and being a good partner to them and bringing all of the aspects that a large organization can bring in a real healthy partnership with a local team. That's still fundamentally important, certainly in Michigan, but I think in every other market that we've participated in, that's been the playbook for us.
Now, Michigan has more than 500 communities that have opted out, and that we just had an election last week, I think it was last week, and 3 communities voted no to having marijuana businesses in there. How do you convince the local communities that it's not going to be reefer madness? Yeah.
Some of it is, I think, is you just have to demonstrate it. I mean, I think it's watching other, it's showing other success stories of how communities have success, or other states have really rolled out successful programs. There's a monetary aspect to it too. I mean, I think there's a plenty of entrenched information, I think culturally, that we've built up over decades around what marijuana is and what it isn't. And so I think, like anything, it takes time. It takes people in our lives that we interact with that you realize when you really allow people to tell their stories, you learn that you may not be as far away from whether it be veterans, whether it be cancer patients. Like the numbers are staggering in terms of who's relying on this product to really make sure that they can they can sort of function better in their daily lives. When we allow ourselves to really hear other people's stories, and allow it to affect us, I think that fundamentally is what can lead to real long-term change. It's just hearing our neighbors, hearing our loved ones, and really allowing for that space for them to be honest about what they've done, and being willing to rethink the way that your own preconceptions about what it may be or what it may not be.
What are the top things that you're looking for in a local partner?
So people first is a mantra we talk about a lot, whether it be our employees, our partners. They're with the right group of people that are armed with tools and resources that will go take the hill on your behalf. I mean, that is hands down what we look for, is that drive and determination. In some cases more so than, the assets matter obviously, but I think you can do a lot with a team that has really demonstrated their ability to overcome obstacles, to that is but for capital resources. You can see the success that they would have. So.
Mm-hmm. What are the biggest challenges that you can share with people about operating in the marijuana industry?
The regular, certainly operating in a single market is one thing, because I think regulations can change. There's a lot of shifting of opinions, but then you start moving that across multiple different regulatory landscapes. They're all different. All these markets have very different complexions. They have very different dynamics that require subtly different and sometimes dramatically different business models to be successful in terms of intelligently deploying capital to make sure you're getting a return for your investors. So it's I think staying on top of those different changes or those different dynamics, and being willing to put in place a plan that may look a little bit different by market that can certainly be very challenging. You got to know the market you're working in, and be open to the fact that it may look a little different than what you may have done next door.
Well, I would think that, especially with processing things like that, that it would be difficult when you've got, 10 different states now that have totally 10 different regulatory models on what you can have, what you can't have.
Yeah, or even allowing some of the things that we've had to work with local communities, Massachusetts, for example, to just convince them to allow us to use the type of processes that we've already demonstrated success in other markets. There's a lot of work that goes into just education on sort of what we're doing, what the risks really are versus what the perceived risk is. So.
Well, Tyson, there we go. I think we've got we have run over our time, so
Right. Well,
I think
thank you
that'll
so
be it.